got to see all kinds of sports stars and movie stars and TV personalities and people from foreign countries and diplomats. And what was, I thought, very special was just giving tours of the West Wing to these high-profile individuals. That was such a benefit because the White House was one thing, but the West Wing was special.
Hello, and welcome to What It's Like To, the podcast that lets you walk in someone else's shoes and live vicariously through their unique experiences. I'm your host, Elizabeth Pearson Garr, and each episode I'll be asking a new interviewee all the what, why, when, and wheres of how they do what they do. To me, one of the most intriguing things about the Secret Service is right there in the name. It's secret. Well, today we're going to demystify some of that. My guest on this episode, Daniel Dluzneski, spent 24 years as a lieutenant in the United States Secret Service. He worked in the Canine Bomb Detection Unit with his dog Korak, protecting the president, the vice president, and their families. After Daniel retired, he applied his experience and his skills to a new area, educating people and organizations about what to do in emergency situations, such as an active shooter, fire, or bomb threat. Daniel, I know you have a lot to share with me, so welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Elizabeth. Appreciate it.
It's important topics that you deal with here.
Yes.
I'm interested in your background and how you got into this. So with your work as a Secret Service agent, can you really tell me about that? Most of us, I think, picture what we know from movies and TV, which is the guy in the suit with the earpiece following along next to the president, but you were in the canine unit. So did you go ahead of the president and search out? Tell me what you did.
Well, first to start off, I wasn't an agent. I was part of what's called the Uniform Division. Just a little bit of history. The Secret Service was created back in 1865, not for protecting the president, but actually to stop the counterfeiting after the Civil War. So they really didn't start protecting the president until after President McKinley was shot in 1902. And that's when Congress designated them to protect the president through the Department of Treasury. My division, which was called the Uniform Division, didn't come into existence until 1922. We were part of the White House Police. And then it wasn't until 1930 that they decided to incorporate us into the Secret Service. And as time went on, that part of that division grew. And it became the Executive Protection Service, and then it finally became the Uniform Division of the Secret Service in the 70s. So when I joined back in the 80s, right at the end of Reagan's term, we had three divisions. We had the White House Division, we had a Foreign Missions Division, and a Vice President's Division. And fortunately, I got to start at the Foreign Missions branch. And unlike the agents, as the Uniform Division, we had dual powers. I had federal police powers, but I also had metropolitan Washington, D.C. police powers, meaning I could arrest you for threatening the president, but I also could arrest you for assault, burglary, robbery, drugs, weapons, anything like that. So it was a regular law enforcement police agency within the Secret Service. Not only did we protect the White House grounds, the vice president's residence, but we protected over 800 foreign embassies and chancelleries in the metropolitan area of Washington, D.C. We had vehicles, we had motorcycles, we went on calls. I've done drug arrests, weapons arrests. I worked undercover. I went through crime scene search training and was certified as a crime scene search technician, like the CSI people you see on TV. I stayed with the Uniform Division because there was the ability to go to be an agent and talk in my sleeve and wear the nice suits and stuff. But I didn't want that for two reasons. One was I didn't want to be forced to move to a certain part of the country. I wanted to stay right in Washington, D.C. So I stayed with the Uniform Division because they had these specialized units. They had canine. They had the counter sniper, the guys on the rooftop. They had the emergency response team, the motorcade unit. Like I said, the crime scene search technician. So they had more specialized units. And by my 3 years, which was the minimum in order to apply for the canine position, I was fortunate enough to get in the canine. And I worked with my dog, Korak. He was a Belgian Malinois. Now, back then, back in the 80s, it was the longest training of any training throughout the Secret Service. With the dogs. It was 26 weeks of training because
half a year.
At the time we were both bomb trained and handler protection training. So here were these dogs with this dual role of not only finding bombs ahead of the president wherever we went, but they also were there to protect us if they needed to. He was your partner, and he was my partner, and he lived till he was 13 years old. And after that, I went to the White House. We were the only armed police force that gives tours of the White House because I loved history. I worked in the West Wing and worked in public affairs. I was a spokesperson for the Secret Service. And I eventually ended up as a lieutenant after my 24 years and then eventually retired.
Was it kind of a heady experience to be with the president and vice president and being in these situations with maybe other world leaders or in certain environments?
People would ask me, what was it like? There were days where it was very boring. And there were other days where the level was just, you had these intelligence come in. And after a while, we would think, well, how high of a level could we get to? I mean, there's not a level plus. So, yeah, you would have these intelligence reports come in. Oh, we've got this terrorist group and that terrorist group, and we've got these threats and that threat. Well, look, we're already at a high, intense level. We can't get any more higher. So, yes, there were days like that, but there were other days where the president still had to conduct business. So, yeah, there would be events. There'd be bill signings. You'd have senators and diplomats coming in. You still had social events that would go on. So I got to see all kinds of sports stars and movie stars and TV personalities and people from foreign countries and diplomats. And what was, I thought, very special was just giving tours of the West Wing to these high-profile individuals. That was such a benefit because the White House was one thing, but the West Wing was special. The West Wing was not open to the public. That was something that was a little higher level than to get over to the West Wing, to have you see the Oval Office, the Roosevelt Room, the Cabinet Room, Situation Room, where all these things happen. So that was kind of the neat thing. And there's funny stuff, too, that was happening. I remember I was given a tour of the Oval Office, and there were a couple ladies there, and I was telling them about the Oval Office and all the history behind it. And President Clinton was at home at that time. This was on the weekend. And we just hear over our little earpiece, hey, the president's on his way over to the Oval Office. And it's literally like 20 feet away. So like, ladies, you have to get out of here. You have to go because he's at the Oval Office. And he got there so fast that he looked up and saw these two women. And he goes, no, they can stay. And they were allowed into the Oval Office. They got to take pictures with him. I mean, they just had the time of their lives. So it's all about luck and opportunity. And I told these ladies when I left, I said, you guys got a story for the rest of your lives to be able to do that, to have him invite you in. So there were times like that. I remember telling friends of mine who was your favorite president to work with would be George Bush Sr. He was like your dad, and Barbara Bush was like your mom. He would invite officers to play horseshoes. He said, hey, we need a fourth. You got to come over here and play horseshoes.
Wow.
Well, sir, we're on duty. What are you doing? So,
it won't reflect very well on me.
He was just an amazing guy. I remember when I was in K-9, we went down to Houston, the Astrodome, for the Republican National Convention. And if you know the Astrodome, it's a big round building. And the atrium or the lobby area is just this huge sidewalk with the glass doors that's round. It goes in a circle. So I had finished my sweep and everything. The president was getting done with his speech, and you hear on the radio, president's getting ready to leave. Okay. So I'm there with my K-9, and K-9 always works with military EOD.
Sorry, the what division?
They're called the Explosive Ordnance Division, EOD. They're military personnel, and we work in conjunction with them because there are areas that the dog can't get to, whether it's high or low or down somewhere where the dog can't get to. Anyway, we're kind of standing there, and at the time, the high-level agents would ask you, if the president's coming, can you just kind of disappear? Just go over there on the side, kind of hide kind of thing. We all knew that. So here comes the president down. He's at least, oh my God, Elizabeth, he's at least 1,000 feet away. The old tiny object. He's way down there at the end of this hallway. And we're kind of standing off to the side. We're not right out.
Scattering.
Yeah, it's just us. It's just me and these two EOD guys, the president and the agents. And he turns towards us, starts walking towards us, and he's waving. So, of course, we're like, who the hell is he waving at? So we're waiting, and we're kind of oh, my God, he's coming this way. We got to disappear. So we're trying to hide behind this pillar where there's nowhere to go. He keeps walking towards us, and he's waving and waving. We're still like, what the hell? And he was waving at us. He walked that entire distance to shake all of our hands and say, you guys doing a great job. And he turns around and leaves. And we're just standing there with our mouths open going, what was that? And I tell you, you talk about raising the level of someone you appreciate.
Yeah. You were told to sort of disappear when he comes by, and
Right.
instead he goes
Here
out
he
of his
comes.
way to make you
Right.
feel important, because
Yeah.
you guys are doing such an important job for his safety. So just to clarify for my mind, your job when you're working in the canine unit was to get there early to do the bomb assessment and to make sure
Yes.
everything is okay.
We
So
would-
you were
we would get
always
there-
on the advanced team?
Yes, we would get there
Okay.
at least 6 to 8 hours prior, no matter what the event was. It was a big event. Obviously, it was more than one dog. You'd have multiple dogs. And you would search certain sections along with your EOD partners. And you would do that ahead of time. And then once that was done, then you had individuals, usually agents, that came by and what they would call just secure that area, meaning no one was allowed in there until time of the event when they went
I
through the
see.
metal detectors. So,
Yeah.
yeah, we went ahead of the president. We got to stay in some of the nicest hotels. And it was really kind of neat because here you got people paying thousands of dollars for these hotel rooms. And here's this guy all dressed in black with this black dog, just looking really aggressive looking. No, he's fine. He's fine. He's a bomb dog. He'll be okay.
Yeah, he's
So that
he's
was,
doing the important work.
so yeah, it was fun. I saw a lot of events at the White House. I was there when Francisco Duran took an AK-47, sprayed the front of the White House because thought he saw President Clinton. It was just a person with the whitish hair. He thought it was President Clinton. And I was also there during a really strange occurrence. We had an individual who stole a one-engine Cessna plane in Maryland, and he was going to fly it into the White House. Well, he took a couple of turns around the Washington Monument. He was below the radar. He cut his engine. So he glided in. And this was at night. So I'll never forget the officer in the south ground sees just this black object just gliding in towards him on the south grounds. And fortunately or unfortunately for him, it crashed into the magnolia tree, the Jackson magnolia, the oldest tree on the grounds. It crashed
Oh
into.
my gosh.
And he died instantly, the individual. You just heard this loud crash. Like, what was that? So that was a very strange occurrence. And I know what you're leading up to, Elizabeth. You're leading up to a 9/11.
Well, that was right in the middle of your years. I know
Yes.
that.
9/11, I was a sergeant. I was working the special operations during tours. That was the day of the congressional picnics. We had all these picnic tables set up on the south grounds, and they had all the food ready, and everything was ready to go. And we gave our normal tours, and during that time, we would get in, probably during the day, you're talking 10, 15,000 people getting through the White House during the day, which is a lot. This is,
Wait, that's just a
before-
typical tour day?
typical tour day that you would
Oh,
have
wow.
people coming into the White House. So like you and everyone else, we watched that first plane fly in and you're kind of like, okay, the pilot passed out. Something weird happened.
Yeah.
It was just an anomaly. And
Right,
it wasn't
an
until that second
accident.
plane. Yeah, an accident. It wasn't until that second plane hit, we're like, uh-oh. And then the red flags went up and we had to clear the entire White House grounds of everyone, staff and everything. And I learned at that time, because why would you know any other time, the ushers in the White House. And just for an explanation, the head usher of the White House is in charge of all the personnel within that residence. That means your maintenance people, your cleaning people, everything from your cooks, butlers, everything within the White House, they're in charge of, and they have a designation that if there is an event, there is one usher that needs to stay the entire time they're in a residence, whether that residence on fire or under bombing or attack, they are designated for that day. I didn't know that at the time, so that was kind of interesting. So I basically went around with the usher to try to clear out anyone that was there. And I'll never forget, something I kind of pointed, it's just something that stuck with me with all these years. I had an officer that was sitting in the chair outside the president's elevator. That's his post. He's there all the time. That's covered 24 hours a day. And I was walking through the residence and he stands up and he looks at me and he just asked, how's things going? And I said, well, I'm in the process of clearing out the White House. And as I walk towards the exit door, he starts following me. Like, everybody's exiting out. We're evacuating, right? I turned back and I said, no, you have to stay on your post. Because we had no idea what was going on. Absolutely no idea. We thought we were under attack.
Yeah,
And
this
he
was
gave me-
unprecedented.
He gave me this look. I'll never forget the look he gave me, which was basically, I'm expendable. And I didn't say it, but it was just this unspoken thing that, yeah, he was expendable. And he went back and sat down at his post, and I can imagine the fear. So once I got everyone out of the White House, we then expanded our zones out from the grounds outside of the White House.
And so you were in charge of this?
No,
of clearing
I was
out
a sergeant. I had
okay.
a certain responsibility of a zone or a section that I was in charge of. And then once we got outside of the White House, I had maybe 15 or 20 officers that were under me that stayed with me. And we went outside the White House and we shut down, it was just absolute chaos. I mean, everything, the cell phones, nothing worked. Traffic came to a standstill. Right. And the interesting thing, or the scary thing, I guess, is we all looked up in the sky because we thought it's coming. I mean, we thought tanks were coming down the street. We didn't know what. We didn't know anything. And there were so many rumors coming over the radio. You're hearing things of fire trucks that were stolen. You're hearing things of, we've got 20 white vans coming down the highway. All these different things were happening at once. And we're like, what in the heck is going on? We had no idea.
Yeah. And you thought you were probably the target of everything right there at the White House. Yeah.
And so it was very reassuring. And there was just a sigh of relief when we looked up and we saw the F-16s going over our heads, and you saw the American Star. Oh, thank God, we've got control of the skies. Now we're just worried about tanks coming down the street. None of that happened, obviously, but it was just an event that no one will ever forget. Everyone kind of remembers where they were on 9/11. I remember we couldn't use the cell phones, obviously, and there was a store there that let us use the landline, and I was able to get a hold of my wife. She was up in Maryland. But yeah, it was an event that no one would ever want to go through. And I remember turning south towards the Pentagon and seeing that plume of smoke going up when the plane hit the Pentagon. And I had counter snipers on the rooftop that were watching the whole thing. They saw the plane. That plane was going for the White House because he circled twice. And if you ever look at a map of the White House, it's in between the Treasury and the old Executive Office building on the other side of the Washington Monument. It's very tiny. It's a really small target, but the plane was too big. He tried to make the turn, and the officers on the rooftops heard him powering up to try to make the turn. He couldn't, so he took a secondary unit. He just went for the Pentagon and crashed over there. But yeah, it was a day.
So that day must have highlighted something that was present throughout your whole career. You have to have a lot of bravery to be in that job. You could live on the edge of fear all the time. You're there to prevent bad things from happening. And so how did you psychologically prepare for every day in that job?
Well, at that point, your training kicks in. It's all about the training and what we needed to do. Yeah, we took directions from higher ups, obviously, but they also were hearing the same information we were hearing. So your training just kicks in. Okay, we need to close the streets down. Okay, all right, we need to bring K9 in and check these cars over here. And of course, during that time, we were set up the bicycle racks, they call them, those little barricades.
Oh,
and I laugh about it now. We had so many people running up to us at those barricades and saying, I need to get to my car, or I need to get here. And I said, do you realize what's going on? You're not going anywhere. Walk. The city was completely shut down. So it just was an odd situation when you had people that just were oblivious to what was happening. But back to your question. Yeah, the training kicked in. On that day, the only fear I had was control of the skies. That was our biggest fear. Other than that, once we had control of the skies, like, okay, we're on the ground. If there's an attack coming, we'll get prepared for it. We'll be okay. I guess it's innate. You just think about your training and you just, buckle up.
One more question about the White House, because I've always been curious. You mentioned the president's elevator and that you were in the residence. I've always wondered what the private residence was like.
That's interesting that you say that, because obviously tourists aren't allowed up into the private residence. The White House consists of at least 6 floors, maybe 7 if you can consider the shelter underneath. When we gave a tour, as people come in, you're only going to see the 2 floors, basically the ground floor. And then once you get upstairs, what's called the state floor, where all the events are. Above that is 2 more floors of the residence. Well, we were fortunate enough because the usher said, you know what? He said, look, if there's ever an emergency, you guys need to know what's up there. So it was the funniest thing, because when we got up there, we were just like tourists. We're looking around, our mouths are open, looking at all the artwork and stuff, like, oh my God, what's this? And
all the history that's happened.
All the history. The Lincoln bedroom. He had a copy of the Gettysburg Address there in one room in this glass case. Got to see their bedroom. It got these hidden doors. Got to see this other bedroom. It was neat to see. And each room had its own fireplace. It was just really neat to be able to see something like that.
So it's just kind of like a big, grand house.
Yeah, I would say Victorian. Some people say it's more the federal architecture, but yeah, it's just this grand house that, kind of creaks
Yeah.
with the wood floors and everything.
Right.
So
It's
yeah,
not modern.
no, but it's got all the modern amenities. Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
neat.
Wow. What an experience. Well, I know that you spent 24 years in a variety of capacities there. And then after you retired, you moved to Florida. And did you think you were just going to sit on a beach and retire? I know that eventually you've worked your way into quite another career.
Yeah, so you're quoting me there. That's what I wanted to do. I moved to Florida and sit on a beach. That's it. That's all I want to do. But being the kind of personality, as an alpha personality, my wife at the time, my ex-wife now, she said, look, you got to do something. You can't be sitting around. And it just so happened that this job opened up in one of our county schools, and it fit my resume perfectly. It was with the Pinellas County school system. It was a new position of emergency management coordinator, but I kind of didn't know what I was getting into, because I remember asking what the day-to-day duties were, and they were like, well, you'll find out. Well, I found out that I was alone. I had no staff. It was just me. And I was in charge of over 100,000 students at
Wow.
140 schools in the district. They said, here's what you need to do. They need to have a safety plan. They need to have a security assessment. I said, okay. So I made sure I sent an email to every principal, every one of these 140 schools. And I said, I want to visit with you in person. I want to see your school. It took me over a year, but I got to visit every single one of those schools. The one thing that I did notice at some of these schools, though, they were still using codes.
Can you describe what that is?
Yeah,
for people
it's
who don't
almost
know?
like you see in hospitals. We'll have a code white, a code blue, a code red, a code purple.
Code red, yeah.
And what happens is, in a school situation, they'll say a code. I don't care what color it is they use. But when someone hears a code over the thing, they're like, well, that doesn't sound good. Well, what if you've got visitors there? If you've got maintenance personnel there? What if you're going to substitute? They're like, well, what does that code mean? I mean, was that a fire?
I know it's negative, but I don't know what to do. Yeah.
So I said, no, we have to get away from codes. Just use plain language. Say, we're in a lockdown, whatever it is. That's all. Just use plain language. And boy, they bucked against that for a long time. They were so involved with these codes. But I found out from a doctor friend who worked in an emergency room, and she said, oh, we've got these little reference cards. She said, I don't even know some of these codes. They'll give out a code purple or a code orange. I forgot what it is. So I'll see on the reference card, okay, orange means this. So that's what I did. I created some of these reference cards, and I put down on there what the emergency situation was. And I went to this one elementary school, and I said, well, how do you put out that there's a lockdown? She says, oh, the words we use are, the pony is being delivered today. And I looked at her. I said, what? She says, well, we don't want to upset any of the kids. So that's what we put out. And I laughed. I said, well, no, that makes no sense. I said, just use plain language, because most people be like, they delivered a pony here today? What is that?
Yeah.
Said, no, don't use that. No, please.
And then it's so confusing if they're ever somewhere and a real pony is delivered.
Exactly.
It's like the poor kid is confused.
These kids are not naive, and they know what's going on. You're not going to fool them. I remember we did a lockdown drill, and this principal liked to trick the staff there, and he went out into the yard during the drill. Now, first I'll explain what a lockdown drill is. You turn off the lights, you close your curtains, you lock your door, you sit quietly on the floor, in the corner, away from the windows, away from the door, silence your cell phone. You do not listen to any announcements. You don't open that door, and you just be quiet, wait for the good guys to come in with a key and unlock the door. So what the principal did that one time, he says, I'm going to try to trick these people. He went out into the courtyard, and he had the bullhorn, and he says, well, it's all over. Everybody come on out. The drill is over. His teachers did not do anything. They knew it was a trick. 2 substitutes said, oh, okay, I'm going to unlock my door and get back to teaching. These kids went, no, it's a trick. It's a trick. They know. They knew. You don't listen to the announcements. You don't open the door until they come with the key. So a lot of these kids
are smart.
They're very smart. So this idea that these kids feel danger or anxious or frightened by these drills, I don't think that's true. the majority. Yes, there are children with anxiety issues. Yes, there are children that, for whatever reason, get fearful of something like that. The idea that these students get anxious due to the drills themselves, then you're not drilling properly. You should not be drilling with live ammunition or even loud noises, police running everywhere, shouting, yelling, banging. There's no reason for that. There really isn't. You want to make it as real as possible, but not real so it goes above and beyond what these students are going to run into.
The reality is that we all hate that we're here. We hate that there is such a thing as a school shooting or a bomb threat. We get sick to our stomach every time. We're seeing it way too often that anyone should feel threatened in a public space like that or at a grocery store or, it's awful. But that's a conversation of how to stop that from happening. But now that we're here, that it is happening, how to keep the people safe in these places, in a workspace, in a school, that's what you're dealing with. Because it is happening, just ignoring the fact that it's happening is not going to help. We need to know how to keep ourselves safe or our kids safe in that situation. So pretending that it's maybe not going to happen is not going to help anyone.
No. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote my book, The First 5 Minutes, The School Shooting Survival for School Teachers and Administrators. Teachers nowadays, Elizabeth, toughest job.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing what everyone has gone through with the pandemic, but especially teachers, because now they're already under pressure to keep their schools at a certain grade level. Well, now we know by testing that because of the pandemic, they've fallen way behind again. And so they're under pressure again. And now they've got to have in the back of their mind, there's all these shootings going on also. So, my gosh, now I'm in a dangerous situation. Fortunately, and I say fortunately because it is like being struck by lightning. As the media keeps exposing this, they're really very, very rare that these school shootings happen. And it's something that all I ask for is that you're prepared and give you the confidence to be prepared as a teacher. Because I've had teachers that will come to me usually after an event, obviously, and say, look, I'm scared. I'm scared to come to school. What I learned from the Secret Service is, even though everyone hated training because it just felt like, oh my gosh, we got to do this over and again. But it gave you implicit memory. We had to shoot. We were the only agency that would have to qualify to shoot every month. And that was one thing that became implicit memory, your muscle memory. It just was something every month you do the same thing. And they wanted that in your head because in an emergency situation, you're going to do the same thing. So that's what I wanted to do with these teachers and drill as often as possible. As you know, you have to do a fire drill every month. Like, okay, when was the last time there was a fire that killed anyone in a school? Hundreds of years ago. And yet active shooter drills, or I call them active assailant drills, are maybe once every 6 months, every quarter, maybe only once a year. Have these drills more often because then it will be implicit memory. Okay, lockdown. I know what to do. Lock the door, shut the lights, the blinds, sit quietly. Just go through your head what you need to do and wait. Principals said it was so hard for them to sit in their office and wait and do nothing because you want to help. You want to get out there and do something. And I would try to explain to them, no, you're not helping anyone. You have to save yourself first. That's the first thing I say in my book is save yourself first. Then you can help others. And you have to wait. As hard as it is, you're going to hear horrible things. You're going to hear loud noises. You have to make yourself safe. Look what happened at Sandy Hook. The principal came out in the hallway. Look what happened in Nashville. Principal came out in the hallway. You're not doing yourself any good.
So it's like the airplane rule. First put on your own mask and then put on your child's mask.
Absolutely. Keep yourself safe first, then you can help others. And I tell the teachers the same thing. Keep yourself safe first, then you can help your students. And that was very hard for principals to do that. There's something called ALICE. There's another thing called ALIVE. There's another thing called Run, Hide, Fight. All these different things that are out there. And I really want any of your admin people, any of your school board people to research what you're doing because there's plenty of data out there. There's a company called Safe Havens International. They have done all kinds of research on this subject of training, of drilling, of what works, what doesn't work. And so far, everybody agrees, even the Department of Education, the National Psychologists Organization, the Special Resource Officer Organization. Lockdowns are the number one. You lock down. You don't do anything else. Lock down, wait for the good guys. So far, a shooter has not tried to breach a locked door. The reason for that is it takes too long. They want easy victims. They want the ones in the hallway, the ones at the library, cafeteria. They want numbers. They know the cops are coming, so they're either going to kill themselves or, shot by a cop, whatever. So they're not going to try to breach a locked door.
That is so interesting. I don't think I had thought through that. They're not going to try to shoot through or kick down a locked door.
No, it takes too long. Now, obviously, there's crazy people out there. If their intent is to get to that individual in that room, that's another situation. But so far, no, they're not going to breach the locked door. Now, I tell teachers, look, they may try to open that door. If you feel that they're paying too much attention to your door itself, block it. Put a file cabinet, throw it down in front of it, push your desk up against it. Just block the door so they can't get in no matter what. The good guys are coming. And the reason I titled my book The First 5 Minutes is FBI statistics show that most shootings happen between 3 to 5 minutes. Sounds like a short time. When you're involved in it, it sounds like forever, but it really is only about 3 to 5 minutes. It's very, very short time. It's actually less than that where most of your damage is done the first 30 seconds to a minute. When you go through something like this, something very traumatic, you've got the chance of just forgetting everything. You forget what day it is. You forget your name.
Sure.
Everything goes out of your head unless, again, you've been drilling and training. The doors are already locked. Kids, you sit down, quiet, turn the lights off, and we're going to wait for the good guys to come. And the good guys are coming. You're not going to get the Uvalde response. You're going to get the Nashville response. They're going to go in and stop that shooter, and everybody is going to be safe. So, yeah, stay away from this run, hide, fight deal. Stay in a lockdown.
We had a kind of scary incident here in our town a couple of weeks ago. My daughter's high school, she actually wasn't there. Her class was off-site, but apparently all the kids were in their first period of the day, and a note was discovered on one of the buildings, printed out from a computer, not handwritten, saying, "I'm going to shoot up this school or this building." And so immediately everyone supposedly went into lockdown, but apparently all the teachers handled it differently. Some went into like full lockdown, like kids had to hide in closets and things. And some just locked their doors and kept teaching. And it turns out what it was, and this is so heartbreaking too, is that it was a student at the school. There was supposed to be a big test that day, like an AP test. And the kid was so stressed out about taking the test that he or she thought this was the way out, is to put a threat at the school so things would get canceled, which is a whole other discussion, but freaked out an entire student body where kids were afraid to go back to school. Like, is there a shooter? And clearly there's no shooter. This was just a desperate plea for help.
It has happened a lot more recently. Two things. One is what you have talked about is called swatting. And this swatting is they will call 911, and it was done before the schools with individuals who had an issue with someone next door neighbor, somebody down the street that would swat and would call up and the police respond to that place. Now what they're doing is calling in, and it would be bouncing around from like Russia or Germany or China or whatever, because they can't trace the call. There's just too many. Technology is horrible in that respect.
Yeah.
Calling 911. There's an active shooter in front of Smith Jones High School, and hang up. Well, what's going to happen? The police will respond. However, what should happen is the police should have a great relationship with that school. Your first call should go to that school. Don't immediately jump in the car and go hell for leather with lights and sirens and bust into the school and scare the heck out of everybody. First call to the school. What's going on? We've got this call that they said an active shooter. Like, no, nothing's going on here. These individuals want to see this response, this police response, just this chaos. The other thing that's happening is this airdrop. And within the school, you'll have an individual airdrop to another individual a threat. And then, again, all hell will break loose after that. And that's why the idea of cell phones in schools, disagree completely. There is absolutely no reason for kids to have cell phones in schools. I asked my son, he's a junior in high school. I said, do they allow you to have your phones out during class time? He goes, No, not really, but kids will sneak it under their desk,
Yeah,
under their arm,
same
whatever.
thing.
They'll
Yeah.
sneak it on under texting, whatever. This has got to stop, especially if you're a
It's
teacher.
just a
You're under enough pressure. It
distraction.
is
Oh,
absolute
yeah.
distraction. There's no reason. There's such helicopter parents now. I'm a parent myself. If I need to get a hold of my kid, I'll call the front desk. Hey, get him up to the front desk. I need to talk to him or whatever.
That's how they did it in our day. We'd get a call
Absolutely.
slip and we'd go to the office. It worked.
No reason to have these cell phones. I had a bomb threat come in at a high school of 1,500 kids. Next door to that high school was a middle school with another 800 children. Well,
Oh, boy.
bomb threat at the high school means you evacuate, which, again, I disagree with, but they evacuate. Well, that means the middle school next door, they're going to evacuate also. Well, now you've got these kids with their cell phones texting their friends and their parents saying, hey, we're under a bomb threat. I saw a package with wires. I saw this package on the second floor.
No.
I saw a backpack. All false.
So
all of it was false. So
The whole
guess what?
community
Here come the
riled up.
parents. So they're flooding the streets to get to the school. I had to have the ladder truck block the road into the school just to stop them from coming in. And you're talking a high school, minimum of 2 hours to search that school before they allow the kids back in. And of course, bomb threats we called it because it's test day. So that's what they would do. But what's adding to it is the cell phone texting of false rumors that were going on. I had another incident at a high school where we had an individual claim that he saw a student with a gun in the bathroom. Okay, we're going to a lockdown. So now here come the police, and we've got to search the school for this individual with a gun that was in the bathroom. Turned out to be false. However, during that time, here come the airdrops. Here come the rumors. Hey, I saw a gun in Jimmy's class. I saw a gun in Mr. Smith's class. So this went on for hours because now you have to take these threats seriously. So they go from classroom to classroom. Now they're searching all these kids in each class. You talk about disruption. And another thing, here come the parents. Never found a gun. Nothing was going on. The principal said to the parents, look, there is no gun. I still want to take my son home or my child home. So it just
escalates
not right.
everything.
It escalates. Absolutely. Escalates everything. Look, cell phones are a good thing. Yes, I understand the media will pick up on it that Susie said, I love you to her mom. There's an active shooter. And that was her last message to her mom. Okay, they're going to pick up on that, but they don't pick up on all the false rumors that are going on that waste police time and wasted administration's time just because it's test day or whatever. So that's a pet peeve of mine. No cell phones.
Speaking of technology, I know you've also advised that it's really not necessary for school districts or institutions to invest in expensive technology. Just stick to the basic drills and training, and we don't need all the bells and whistles.
Absolutely, Elizabeth. It's called security theater. What happens is you'll have an incident that's next door, or an incident will happen maybe in the state over, and the parents want answers. Hey, what are you doing to keep my kids safe? And the administration right away said, hey, we're going to get metal detectors. And that's it. Hey, parents, you're satisfied now. We got metal detectors, just like at the airport. Well, they get these metal detectors, and they'll put them in place. And yes, it may stop some weapons. It didn't stop knives. Sometimes it misses guns. So it's not 100%. And the other thing is, Elizabeth, look, if I'm hell-bent on getting into that school and shooting it up, what's a metal detector going to do? I'm going to go through and just shoot everybody anyways. And if I'm somebody that wants to get a gun into that school, I'm getting the gun into school. I'll wait till after school. I'll wait till during the school because my buddy's going to open up the side door for a pizza delivery. I'm going to go to that side door that I know a teacher's going to open that door for a cigarette, and I can put the gun in then. Or after school event, a basketball, football, a weekend event. I'll get that gun in there somehow. Metal detector is just a knee-jerk emotional reaction that does nothing. And they're so expensive. Yes, you may get a grant from the federal government or even the state government saying, hey, you can use it for security. Don't use it on metal detectors. Use it for special resource officers, number one. They've got things that are automatic door locks. They've got apps out there that will automatically call the police. Just be very aware and test this thing and research it. Don't go by a company that's going to tell you, I can put an app on your phone that's going to make your school safe. No such thing. Nothing's 100%. Train your people correctly, drill correctly, and you'll do much better.
So what's your overall thought about just being in the world today? And I mean, you don't go to school, but you go grocery shopping, I'm sure, and you go to doctor's offices and you go around. And are you more anxious and worried about making your way in the world and sending your son to school than you were in previous decades?
Well, I'll tell you, sometimes, but you really can't live your life in fear. You can't live your life,
True.
I'm just going to stay inside my whole life because the world is dangerous. Look, the world is dangerous no matter what. That's just the way it is. Be aware, be what they call situational awareness. If you go into a store, where are the exits? You go into a restaurant, where's the exit? Not the door you came into. Find another exit and just look. That's all. It's something that even I, after a time, relax too much and forget. But, when something happens, you'll feel it. You will. People say that it takes a special ability. It doesn't. You'll feel something in your gut. Something doesn't feel right. There's something wrong here. So when you go out, when you go to the movie theater, when you go to the mall, whatever, just remember where the exits are. I know people are busy. They're shopping. They're looking for things. They're distracted by their kids, whatever. But just think to yourself, okay, I noticed there's an exit over there. Okay, I'll remember that. I know there's a back exit over there through the kitchen. I'll remember that. Has it gotten worse? Yeah. Sure, anybody could admit it's gotten worse. It's gotten worse from the pandemic. It's gotten worse from the mental health crisis. It's gotten worse because of the drugs. Yes, I think it's gotten worse, but I think we can keep yourself safe. Anything could happen, but just try to be aware of, your surroundings.
Yeah, I've learned so much from you, and I think we can all be a little more prepared.
Good.
So,
thank you so much for having me on, Elizabeth.
I think it's great that Daniel took his training from the Secret Service and is using it in service of others. Here are some of my takeaways from our conversation. Number 1, treat everyone with respect, including, or maybe especially, people who are working at a lower level than you. We really are all on the same team. 2, keep your options open. Even if you think you're retiring, your passions and interests may lead you to another opportunity. 3, don't complicate or confuse things. Use plain language. Kids are really, really smart. 4, for most people, drills and training lead to better outcomes in the long run. Being prepared is better than being scared. And finally, number 5, when you're in a public space, take a quick look around for where the exits are. It's a simple act that may help you in an emergency. I'd like to thank Daniel Dluzneski for sharing his experiences and his expertise with me. Clearly, we talked a lot about tips to help keep people safe in emergency situations. How we got to this place is another discussion entirely. I feel that as Americans, we need to have a serious conversation and serious action about gun violence in this country. If you'd like to learn more about Daniel and his book, which is called The First 5 Minutes, School Shooting Survival Guide for Administrators and Teachers, please check out the show notes for this episode on our website, whatitslike2.net. You can also find all of our past episodes there. If you want to hear from someone else with a service background, please check out episode 8, when Eric Davids shared about being in the military. I'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to this podcast and tell a few friends about it too. I'm Elizabeth Pearson Garr. Thanks for being curious about what it's like.